Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer, and this is episode 7. My guest for this episode is conductor Mark Stickney. Before we begin, I need to ask a favor. If you enjoy this podcast, would you please go to iTunes and give it a rating? This will help spread the word and bring the show to more listeners. Hi, Mark.
Hi, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So before we begin, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself for the listeners.
My name is Mark Stickney, and for the last 6 years, I've been the director of bands at Plymouth State University in the middle of New Hampshire. I teach trombone, euphonium, and tuba, as well as conducting and some music education courses. I also coordinate our graduate program in instrumental music education and run the New England Band Directors Institute, which is a 3-day clinic for teachers of all levels. Outside of school, I get to travel a lot, guest conduct all over the country, and do clinics. I am also the production manager for the Newport Music Festival, which is a chamber festival every summer in Newport, Rhode Island. And for the last year and a half, I have been the artistic director of the Seacoast Wind Ensemble, which is an adult community wind ensemble based in Kittery, Maine.
Okay, so can you tell me your origin story?
Well, I was born in Virginia, but my family moved to just outside of Newport, Rhode Island when I was only a few years old. I come from a musical family. Both my parents are musicians. My mother's a church organist and a piano teacher, and both my parents sing in community choirs probably 2 or 3 nights a week, still to this day. I started off on piano and wasn't really that successful as a piano student. And switched to trombone the first opportunity I could in 5th grade, and played all through high school, and ended up going to Gettysburg College, where I wanted to study history but became a music major and also became a tuba player. Graduated with a degree in music from Gettysburg College and went on to get a master's degree in tuba performance and a doctorate in conducting, and pretty much been teaching all over the place since then.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting combination. You're not the first musician that I've interviewed that wanted to be a history major or had history as a background interest.
Really?
Yeah, and in fact, that was going to be my major if I wasn't a music major as well.
It's a great subject, and Civil War was my passion in high school. I loved reading about the Civil War, which is one of the reasons why I picked Gettysburg College, was not so much for the music, but for the history part.
When did you first think that maybe you wanted to be a conductor or go into music education or music as a profession?
I was a music ed major for about a year and a half in college. I started that way, and I convinced myself that I never wanted to teach. So I switched to a BA music degree. Got rejected for a few grad schools my senior year of college, mostly because I'd only played the tuba for 4 years, so I probably wasn't that good. Ended up practicing for a year and doing whatever jobs I could to live off of, and then went to graduate school and got a teaching assistantship where I got to teach classes, teach some ensembles. I learned a little bit more about conducting and thought, maybe I need to rethink this and go into education and conducting. And then I got a job in Oklahoma and realized that I still knew absolutely nothing about teaching, knew absolutely nothing about conducting. So I decided to go back and head back east and did some music education studies at the University of Rhode Island, and then got my doctorate in conducting at Rutgers, and then decided that full-time college teaching was where I wanted to be.
I see. And so what was that teaching job that sort of made you want to go back? What were you doing at that point?
I got hired as the director of bands at a really small school called Oklahoma Panhandle State University. I think they were desperate for someone, and I was desperate for a job. It was a great experience, but I was completely over my head, and I had a contract for year 2, and I guess they were happy with what I was doing, but I realized that, I wasn't really helping the situation, and I really needed to learn a lot about what I was doing. So I decided to quit working and become a student again and try to figure out how I could get to where I needed to be to teach college, because I honestly, at that point, knew I wanted to be a college teacher.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there are many musicians or professionals that have a clear linear path. I think most of us have kind of a winding road to where we are.
Yes.
You want to tell me about your sort of early band experiences, junior high, high school?
I was lucky enough to have the same band director from my second year studying until through high school. And when I moved up to high school, he came up to high school with us, took over that job. And he was also my private trombone teacher. So I got great experience working with that. I can say that my first experience in fifth grade was not the most incredible experience for me. Had I had the same director going forward, I probably would have quit music. Just based on it was just not a very pleasant experience for me. I was not the most motivated student growing up, but music was a way where I could get to be productive and do things. Played all through high school, did jazz band, did some singing. I think that's pretty much my experience. It's kind of your typical high school playing experience.
Right, but from what I'm looking for is like, what was it that made you sort of like take that step?
I think outside of school, I mentioned that I worked for this classical music festival. When I was a freshman in high school, I got hired on the crew for this festival, building stages, doing lights and setting up chairs, and just getting to interact with the musicians, getting to spend time with these world-class professional musicians, living with them in dorms, hearing them perform, I think is what really got me interested in music, at least at that point, as well, not my main passion, something that I really love to do.
Well, you have you have several different things on your plate right now. So do you want to talk about Plymouth State?
Plymouth State's a great program. I've been here for this is my sixth year. I had to remember that. It's a combined program with music, theater, and dance, which I think makes for the perfect arts program. We collaborate together. I've had dancers with my band. I conduct a symphonic band. We have one major band made up about 60 students plus about 10 dedicated community members who join us, some of which have been in the band for a couple decades. I took over a program in a great place. My predecessor did an incredible job. He had been there for 20 years, Gary Corcoran. Great resource for me when I even to this day, when I still kind of get confused about how Plymouth State works. He's still there to help out, which is kind of unusual for people when you leave a job and someone takes over. I know in my past experiences, it hasn't been, I haven't always had a resource to look back to as far from, but we do 4 big concerts a year, which is kind of, I think, standard for a university. And none of our concerts we actually do alone. There's always either a guest or something in our concerts, which to me is a great experience for my students.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw just the other day you posted that you're going to do a space program next year.
Yes, this is one of my ways of avoiding finishing my grading for this semester was to look at ideas. I had a couple scores on my desk. One was Julie Giroux's, and the name escapes me, something about Orion, Journey to Orion, I think. And there was another score, which the name completely escapes me now. And I thought, I think we need to do something on space and stars. And so I put a thing on Facebook and emailed a couple friends. And I have something like 30 titles to choose from now. Plus I also have a light up baton that I need to try. My sister for a Christmas present gave me a battery powered light up baton. So I need to somehow work that into that concert as well.
I'd like to see the video.
It should be an adventure. And I think that goes along with my programming. I try not to do normal.
Well, I think that's good. I think you have to be honest to yourself if that's what you want to do. And I think the students like it.
I think they enjoy what they do.
Yeah, there's many different ways to create a great program. And there's no wrong way, I think, so long as we're playing music and having fun.
Exactly.
All right, so how about the Seacoast Wind Ensemble?
I was looking for other outlets. My wife, college band director is pretty much school. And there was an opening for an artistic director for an adult wind ensemble. I played in community bands my whole life, but I never had a chance to really conduct one. So I just kind of threw my name in, not really expecting to get much, get a call or an interview because it's almost 2 hours away from here. But they hired me. It's actually really good ensemble. Some of the best players that I've conducted outside of a university setting. We do a lot of concerts, mostly in the summer, but throughout the year. We do everything from your typical community march and highlights from movies and theater production, music to some significant band works. And they're also open to doing new things, which to me is important in an ensemble.
And the Newport Music Festival?
The Newport Music Festival is a 17-day sort of marathon music festival. I got my first job with them when I was 14. I think this coming year, there's 60 concerts in 17 days. Some great musicians from all over the world come in, chamber players, vocalists, pianists, string players, wind players, and the concerts are put on in the mansions in Newport, which is a beautiful, beautiful setting.
How many years is that? That festival has some fame. How many years has that been going?
I believe it's on its 49th year this year. So next 2018 will be the 50th year. The director, the current director, is the son of the former director. It's like a second family to me. I've been with them, more than well over half, probably 3/4 of my life. I've actually worked with them. It's a grind, but I don't know what I would do in July if I didn't work with them. 17-hour days are kind of hard when you're in your 40s, but I don't mind because I hire my friends on the crew. There's a lot of teachers who work in the summer, some musicians, but it's a great experience, and it's a beautiful festival.
Yeah. I think it probably refreshes you too. It kind of recharges your batteries.
It honestly makes me look at music in a very different way. I have the utmost respect for every theater and every sound and every technical director I work with, because in a way I sort of know what they're going through.
All right, so tell me about the day-to-day workings of your ensemble. What do you feel sets it apart from other programs?
I think the fact that we never do our own program. We always include other people. Like, we have 4 performances a year, but they're all very different. Our first performance we combine with our percussion ensemble. It's more of a traditional concert. But then in November, we have a concert where we bring in 2 guest composer conductors to conduct my ensemble, but also to conduct 2 100-piece high school honor ensembles. We have what's called the All New England Band Festival, and we have 2 really big bands made up of students from all 6 New England states. We play for them, they play for us. So my students get to hear high school students, they get to hear us, and we get to work with some big names in the field that we've had come throughout the years. And then in the spring, we bring in guest soloists to perform with our ensemble. In March, we just had Cryos Brass, which is a brass quintet based out of Westchester, Pennsylvania. They do a mini residency where they do a master class with the ensemble, and then we perform a concert. Unfortunately, this year, Cryos Brass came. They rehearsed with us on Monday, and then they got stuck in their hotel room till Wednesday because of about 1.5 feet of snow. But we've had people from all over the country, and we even had Joran Markinson, who's a Swedish flautist, come a couple years ago. And it's an incredible experience for my students. We invite people to the master class. It's open to the public. And then in April, we invite a guest ensemble to work with us. This year, we have Berkeley College's band coming to perform with us in a joint concert. Last year, we had the New Hampshire Youth Wind Ensemble. So I try to. It's a small school mentality. We're a small school, but I kind of bring a large school mentality to that small school. So we're kind of a hybrid band. We're in a small program, but I think we do a lot of big program things.
I think that's really is great. It does make you stand out, and it sounds like you have exciting things going that are unique.
It's a great experience for not only for the students, but also for me to get to work with these people, to get to conduct these concertos with world-class musicians. It keeps me fresh. And then the downside is finding something new for next year. How do I one-up myself?
Right. Yeah, you have to sustain that. It can be hard sometimes.
But it's also fun. Yeah, I love doing it, and I couldn't imagine doing it any other way.
Cryos Brass, I taught with Dan Cherry for a year.
Great guy, great player. It was such a great experience. 2 of the people in the quintet are I went to school with. One of the trumpet players I went to Gettysburg College with, and then the tuba player I went to Rutgers with. So it's kind of like a homecoming concert for me. Well,
let's say that you had a concert in 2 weeks, and I handed you a new piece of music to learn. What would be your priorities when teaching it? How would you approach that piece?
I always want my students to not be shy about playing, and I think there's some sort of intimidation factor with having so little time to learn a piece. So I want to keep them playing, whatever happens, I want them to not hold back, and I still want them to attack the music, and I want them to make mistakes. I want them to correct those mistakes, and hopefully they do that quickly. But I want them to not be afraid. I probably would, the minute I got the piece of music, do some research on it and send out an email to my group telling them about the piece. Obviously key, knowing what key the piece is in is very important and something that we tend to forget to work on from time to time. But I would probably, the first thing I would do is read the piece and then give them a few minutes to bracket out sections that they thought were difficult. And then we would just attack those sections. We only have 4 weeks between our first and second concert of the semester. So it's not too far off of kind of what we do on a yearly basis. And it's a quick turnaround. But I think even then the goal is, and I think you probably can read some of this in my blog and some articles I might have coming out, is that no matter what we do, even if it's 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, our primary goal is to teach them how to become better musicians and not necessarily teach the music, and hopefully do both at the same time.
Right. And you mentioned something interesting that caught my ear. You said to teach them not to be afraid. I know my experiences. Have you ever been in a situation in an ensemble where you were afraid?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, me too. And that's such a bad place to be as a young musician, especially.
Yeah.
I don't know. My experience when I first got to college, I was very frightened.
I think we all are. It's a very new experience. You come from a high school where you may be the better player, and then you're thrown into this situation where all of a sudden you're no longer the best, and you're just kind of among people who you don't want to screw up in front of people who might be better than you.
Oh, absolutely. And so what do you do as a director to sort of mitigate that fear?
It's a good question.
Thanks.
I think the way I go about my rehearsals, I can be demanding in rehearsals. I can come down on my group, but I'm really encouraging of them to just play. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I'm not going to yell at you. Now, if you make the same mistake 4 times, I might get a little short, but I expect them to make mistakes. And I think that's really important for us to impart on our students is, hey, first of all, as a conductor, I guarantee I'm going to screw something up.
Sure.
Probably more than I should. But I expect them, especially at the beginning of the process, I expect them to screw up. And I'm hoping they do, because if they don't screw up right off the bat, that means that they're not really trying. And I want them to always be pushing themselves. So I'm very open with, hey, make mistakes, for the first couple rehearsals, but then stop making them.
How about with an honor band? Let's say that you're, one of these 1 day or 2 day deals.
Yeah, those are obviously very different. You have to gauge how much they play versus
right
fixing everything. And I always kind of, I had a student who just did her first honor band, and we had a long conversation about pacing. And I said, I always kind of look at the first trumpet. So when they start leaning to the side and falling, starting to fall over, I know that I pushed it a little too hard. So you have to kind of walk that fine line between getting it as good as you can versus you only have a day to prepare the music. To me, in an honor band, the rehearsals, the concerts are great, but the rehearsals and learning from them, and hopefully them learning from me, I think that's the most important thing. And again, it's the same concept. I always tell students who I work with in honor bands, if you come to my school, this is pretty much exactly the way I'll be. I'm not going to treat you any differently than I would treat my ensemble. So again, make mistakes, screw up. Obviously, we have a shorter time window to fix them. But I would rather have a concert with mistakes where the students just play their heart out versus a concert where it's very sterile and they don't take any chances.
Right. Do you have any advice to young directors or other band directors about that, about sort of pacing especially?
You just have to kind of develop a feel for the group, whether it's your own group or whether it's an honor festival. I did my first middle school with some pushing. I did my first middle school honor festival recently, and to me that was a really strange experience because I don't know how to pace middle school students. So it was an interesting adventure in kind of trying to learn how to feel them out because they don't have the chops or endurance that I'm used to. I think for younger directors, just kind of you have to don't be afraid to ask them and just kind of read their body language. You can tell a lot if they start making more and more mistakes. Then you know you need to kind of pull back a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think that age too, it's concentration to a certain extent. You have to kind of there's only a certain amount of time.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this kind of gets me to my next question. What hard-earned lessons as a conductor would you want to pass on?
I think the biggest mistake that we ever make, well, there are two. One is don't stop learning. I know that for a while, I think we all get kind of cocky in our attitude where we think we know everything, and you stop learning and you stop trying to become better. I think it's a constant adventure, always be learning new things. I've been at this my first job teaching colleges almost 20 years ago, and I still think that there's so much more I need to know. So I think it's just that the fact that we kind of get complacent in what we do and we don't stop learning and we don't look for new adventures. That's one thing. The other would be to watch other people. We need to watch other people conduct. I always watch other conductors. When I do a clinic, I always have the other conductor or the conductor of the group conduct first so I can watch them and learn things. I think especially at the college level, a lot of people feel like they don't need to learn anything from younger conductors. And I think we all do. So I think those are the two hardest lessons. Probably the really hardest lesson is don't overwork yourself. You can work yourself into the hospital. Yeah. You want to say yes to everything and you want to get all the experiences you can. And I encourage that, but you have to also kind of find other outlets outside of music even.
Do you want to talk about that experience that you had?
It was a matter of just doing too much, biting off more than I could chew, just wanting to say yes to everything, playing gigs, conducting, guest conducting. I still do probably 4 to 6 festivals a year. I do a little less clinicking than I might have, and I've kind of worked my teaching schedule to the fact where I can get more. Like I'm very front week heavy teaching schedule, whereas at the end of the week I can kind of pull back a little bit. And I do more. I hike more, but I ended up basically putting myself in the emergency room just based on just being overworked. And it was a pretty hard lesson and a recovery. And your doctor tells you need to stop doing these things and you need to listen or at least try to listen. And you get to reevaluate what's important to you. And to me, I hike more. I do a lot more non-musical things. But I also still do probably almost as much musically. I just have learned to kind of gauge. The secret especially for guest conductors now is, this is probably a horrible secret, is find gigs where you can also work a vacation in. I get to guest conduct in Utah a lot, and I try to do that in the winter because I'm a skier.
Sure.
So I can go conduct a festival and then hit the slopes for a day or two.
That sounds great. So what's your experience working with composers?
We have I have a lot. I've somehow over the years managed to become friends with a lot of composers through social media, just through friends of friends. So it gives me a great opportunity to bounce ideas off them for music. We also have our festival every November where we bring in 1 or 2 guest conductors who are composers. We get to work with them. My students get to work with them. We've also had we've been part of 2 commissioning consortiums at Plymouth State University. So I get to work with composers a lot, which I think is important for us as, especially me as a non-composer. I want to get a composer's input on their music if I can. I make my students in my literature course interview composers as part of their final project, just so they can find out what it's like from a composer's standpoint.
So tell me about the consortium commissions you had.
I did 2 at the same time, which I don't necessarily recommend doing that. It was a great experience, but I wish we could have devoted more time to each one of them. We worked with a company that set up a consortium with Scott Watson for a piece that he wrote, which was a great experience. We got to Skype with him. He also came and conducted, I believe it was before before the commission, he came and did one of our festivals. So my students got to actually work with him, and then we did the commission with him. And at the same time, we were part of a commission by Patrick Burns for a clarinet concerto. They were great experiences. My students really enjoyed being part of that process, especially working with the composer. We got to do a Q&A with Scott. He listened to our rehearsal. He got to give us some feedback, and as a conductor, I really enjoyed having him give feedback on things that maybe even just playing that I didn't necessarily hear with my ensemble. So I think it's a great experience.
Yeah, Scott was my guest in episode 2. He actually recommended that I contact you.
He's a very smart man. He is a great person to work with. These are relationships that I just got to spend time with him at the NAFME Eastern Regional Conference. The relationships that I formed over the years, that people I consider good friends and people I respect a lot in this field, and he's one of them.
Yeah, was that commissioned through Composers in Schools in Concert?
Yes, they do a very good job.
Yeah, they do. Lisa Oman runs that. She does a great job. So, do you have an advice for directors who might be looking to put a consortium together, particularly directors that might not think of commissions as a choice, maybe at the junior high or high school level? What value does that bring to their program?
I think it gives, for smaller schools like mine and for public schools where you don't have a lot of funding, the consortiums are really a good way to do it, where you can put aside a couple $100 here and there to do these. I think students love the opportunity to work on a new piece. The fact that they get to work with a living composer and interact with that composer, I think I don't think we can really put enough stock into the effect that has on students, that they're actually working with a composer and they're playing the piece for the first time. I think is an incredible experience, especially for younger students, because they play a piece of band music, they see a name as a composer, and it really probably means nothing to them. But when they actually get to interact with this person, I think that can make a lasting effect on the student.
Yeah. So you have a blog, and I think about what I do and what the marketplace looks like. You have a very strong post about graded band music.
Yes.
And I know that you don't like the grading system.
I think the numbers really don't mean as much as they might have originally. I think that's my biggest problem with that system, because you don't know. I talk a lot about the grading system with my instrumental literature course. We go through the pros and cons of it, and I think I started that blog off with, so your band's a grade 4 band. Does that mean it's a band full of 4th graders, or does that mean it's a band that plays grade 4 music? And then what does that even mean? If you're a grade 4 band, or you consider yourself, I hope you do stuff that's harder than grade 4, but I hope you also do stuff that might be easier than grade 4. And I hope you don't just pigeonhole yourself and we play this music. And I think that's really important for what we do now. And I think people get into that groove of this is what we do, and they don't look for other opportunities.
Yeah, my apologies for putting words in your mouth there. I didn't mean to do that.
No, you didn't. I don't think you did.
I said you didn't like it. That's not fair.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah. I don't always like it.
Right. Well, as someone who writes music, I don't always like it either.
Yeah, it really restricts. I think it restricts what you can and can't do.
Well, there's definitely times when I make choices based on what the grade level is, and sometimes they're logical choices. Obviously, for a young band, you don't want the clarinets going over the break all the time, and
no,
those are obvious things. But sometimes, just maybe you avoid a certain rhythm or a certain type of pattern that may not fit that grade level.
And I think it's important that we have at least some sort of foundation for being able to pick music. I think maybe we need to take a look at how the grading system works now. And I'm not sure when the last time the grading system was actually changed. Probably not in my lifetime.
No, I think the grading system has shifted, though.
Yeah, I think what the expectations are for each grade. And I look back to what I played at beginning band music versus what I see beginning bands play now. I think that shows it's a good thing for our profession that music has gotten harder.
Interesting. I hear both ends of that perspective. So you think the grades have gone up? You think the music's harder now per grade?
In some cases, yes.
Because I heard someone say that they felt like the music from the 50s and the 60s, sort of the older, that music's sort of too hard now for the grade levels.
Some of it is, especially if you look at the more advanced music, I think. But I think we've kind of, I think it's shifted maybe towards what can we more teach in those grade levels. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I'm overgeneralizing. Maybe it's more about technique and things that are taught as opposed to like the music itself.
Yeah, I think there's been more of a shift to what can we get out of this as far as the educational benefit of this music.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you also talk about competition and the idea of graded festivals, and we shouldn't be into win things.
Yes, I start this off by I'm an athlete. I play beach volleyball now. I tried basketball, but I kept breaking things. So breaking fingers for a musician is not a good thing. So I don't play basketball anymore. I think too much stock, and I, hypocritically, I judge festivals constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we put too much stock into the grade that we get, into winning the trophies. We have a student who just got a job, a former student who just got a job where they were pretty much told, we get this grade at the festival every year. Like, you will get that grade at the festival every year, or else. I don't know what else means you lose your job.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes, and I think it's getting better. But there's still, people put too much stock into getting that trophy or getting that high grade. The best part of me the last couple of festivals I've done have been in New Hampshire and Vermont, where they have a clinic associated with the festival. And to me, that is the most important part of it is getting the comments, getting the critique, and not so much the trophy. And I think there's a lot of people out there who don't necessarily do that. They want to get those ones. That's the most important thing to them.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say, we seem to live in a world where we want everything to be quantifiable.
It's all about winning. I was judging a jazz festival out in Utah, or a regional jazz festival, and out there you get a certain grade at the regional level, you move on to the state. And we were working on the final judging, just trying to tweak the grades to make sure that the right bands went on. And we were, I think only a certain number could go on, and we were kind of stuck between two of the groups. And the director of one of the groups was the host, and he came in the room and was moving things around, and we weren't really paying attention to the fact that he was there. And he stopped us and said, "Can you do me a favor? Can you not move my band on?" And they were the one we were kind of about to push up, and one of us said, "Well, why not?" He goes, "Because they got so cocky when they got that grade last year that even though they probably deserved that grade this year, they don't deserve it." So we didn't move his band on.
It's a teachable moment.
Yeah, for him to be that honest about that, they probably would have moved on, but it wouldn't have benefited his group. And I think more directors need to really kind of focus in on the clinic aspect of festivals. I'm not saying festivals aren't important, but listen to other bands at the festival, do the clinics, find some sort of educational value outside of the trophy.
Yeah, I when I was a high school band director, I found that the trophies were useful as team building.
Yeah.
But that was about it. For me, it was the experience of preparing the students for that competition, for that festival, to get them sort of in that performance framework. I still have all my tapes from judges from when I was a high school teacher. They're all in a drawer.
Yeah, and that's I think where it's at. Listening to the comments and learning for what you can do better. Vermont does this incredible thing where one of the judges actually critiques the conductor. They put a camera behind the ensemble, and you sit at a table with a screen, and you watch the ensemble. You watch the conductor from the ensemble standpoint.
Oh wow!
And your only job is to critique the conductor. And I think I look at some of these festivals, and I think, how comfortable would these directors be to have that happen?
Right.
I think a lot of them wouldn't be, but boy, what a great opportunity. And all the directors who do it, at least one of them said they were really nervous their first time, but it was a great experience for them to, hey, this is somebody telling me the things I'm doing wrong and the things I'm doing right, and maybe better ways I could do it as a conductor.
That's great. I would get comments on my conducting, but it was mostly about the band, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark. So one of the big things that you do every year is the New England Band Directors Institute, and I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that and tell the listeners what that's all about.
the New England Band Directors Institute, it's a 3-day clinic that we host at Plymouth State University. We have reading sessions. We bring in 3 major names to do. We've had Tony Maiello, Frank DeKelly in the past, Robert Sheldon, Richard Saucedo. One of the featured clinicians is a composer this year. It's Rosano Galante is coming to work with. He'll do a session on his music. We also have Bill Burrs from Rutgers, who is my doctoral conducting teacher, which makes me a little nervous, but is also going to be kind of awesome to have him come see me work. And also Cindy Turner from the University of Georgia. We have a number of smaller sessions as well. It's probably, honestly, one of the most inexpensive of these kinds of things you can do. It's only $75 plus maybe $30 a night for a dorm room. But we have publishers, at least a dozen publishers who send us brand new works for us to read. We have a grade 1 and 2 reading session, a grade 3 through 5 reading session. We have a jazz reading session. We have the composers reading session where they work with the ensemble on their music. Alfred Howe Leonard, FJH, a lot of the big names, plus some smaller publishers send us things. It's 2.5 days. It's in July. This year it's July 13th through 15th. It's probably one of the more fun things I do. It's hard to set up, but it's a great experience. We have over 100 participants every year, and you bring your baton. Sometimes there's conducting exercises. You get to interact with a lot of people in your field. We open it up to students. So any current undergraduate or graduate students, for you, it's only $25 to do this. Graduate credit's also available. I encourage the graduate credit because that's kind of what funds the festival.
Is it too late to sign up?
It is not too late to sign up. It only, unless it sells out, which it has in the past, you can sign up until you can come sign up the day of. I don't recommend that just in case. Also, if you want to get a room, that needs to be done by the beginning of July. Some people use it as their vacation. People have been coming to it for 10, 15 years, and they rent a cabin with their significant other, and they come to the clinic for some of those days, and the rest of the time they sit on a lake.
Sounds okay.
It's a really fun experience for the people, and I love doing it. I don't have to do many sessions. I just do one of the reading sessions, and for the most part, I just kind of coordinate it, and I get to kind of sit back and be one of the people who learns from it.
You mentioned that you have publishers that send music, so I'll kind of get back to that a little bit because it interests me. How do you feel about the commercial publication versus self-published composers? Do you feel like you see enough music from self-published?
Having friends who run their own publishing companies and knowing their struggles with J.W. Pepper and some of the larger publishing companies, I think there's an important role for both. I look at people like John Mackey who are totally self-encased composers who do their own thing and are able to do it. I think it's hard, especially if you're a full-time teacher or if composing is something you do in addition to what else you're doing. I'm not sure how you could become self-published. I think it's important. I think the major publishing companies do a lot of work on selling the same people who they can make money off of versus expanding the field a little bit more. And that's not to say that that's good or bad, but it's obviously bad for those people who aren't included in that part of the field. There's a lot out there. And I think especially conductors, public school teachers need to explore more and look at some of these smaller publishing companies, these self-published people, and maybe think outside the box when they're choosing music. And we get these things from Hal Leonard and Alfred, who are great publishing companies. I work with them, and I work with a lot of their composers, and they do really good work. But we get inundated with CDs and pamphlets from these composers, these publishing companies, and we don't spend enough time exploring what's out there on our own.
Yeah, I agree. The advice I have given more than one episode is to go, if you play music by a composer, if you hear music by a composer, go to their website, see what else they have. Not everything is published. Some of it's self-published, some of it's with other companies maybe you haven't seen.
Exactly.
There's so much music out there, and we need to have a larger discussion about the types of composers we're including in our programs as well.
Yes, I have that. I have that discussion on almost a daily basis with one of my friends who works at Shermer. He's a graduate school friend of mine, and trying to include, again, thinking outside the box and exploring new things. We talked earlier about the space program that I'm thinking of doing. There are works by composers I've never heard of, and I've been in this for 20 something years, that people have sent me as suggestions, and I've looked for their websites, I've listened to recordings, and I'm finding music that I didn't even know about. And I think that's the way we have to do it these days, is rely on other people's ideas and go search for things ourselves.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to composers who are writing for band?
Be bold. There's a lot of music that people kind of, here's my style, I'm going to compose every piece of music this exact way. And I think that can get stale after a while. I think constantly expanding your understanding of music and doing things that are a little uncomfortable for you as a composer, and finding a group that will do your music and working with them to see what works and what doesn't work, I think are really important steps. But I'll tell you, for me, I like doing different things. I like composers who take a chance. Throw some electronic stuff in there. Do some different things. And it's the same thing I tell my conducting students, and I try to impose on them, is be uncomfortable in what you do sometimes. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't work, but you don't know until you try. And you may find a totally new concept that you never thought of that really works.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think there's a balance there because, you want to be bold and you want to do things that are different, but yet people also identify you in a certain way.
Well, and at the end of the day, you want your pieces to be played.
Yeah, sure.
Especially, when you look at the younger band music, I think those directors are less willing to be able to take the kind of chances that we can take as college directors. And writing for those younger groups, you want to write, this is my style.
Right. If you commissioned me tomorrow to write a piece for your college ensemble, I would write you a very different piece in the grade 2 that I'm going to write this summer.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. It sounds like personal relationships are really important as well.
I think they are. We talked earlier about me getting to know all these composers, and I make it a life goal to try to get their music out. So when I do festivals, I always look to the music of my friends and that aren't necessarily done at these festivals, in order to introduce not only the students but also their directors and the audience to music that they don't necessarily know. And I think, to me, that's my personal mission, is knowing all these great composers, getting their music out to the greater world, and exposing directors and their students to new music.
Well, we appreciate that for sure.
And I love doing it too. So
yeah, it's an odd thing because, when I was a high school band director, I was kind of fearful of the big name composers. And now that I'm a composer, I sort of am a little reluctant sometimes to reach out. I don't want to appear like I'm, looking for something all the time, Mm-hmm. And so we sort of have this like stigma about marketing and self-promotion, and
I think it's becoming a self-promotion world. I think we have to do a lot of that work on our own now.
I think so.
So says the guy with a blog and all this other stuff.
Being interviewed by the guy with the podcast.
I'm just getting through this process now of doing a bunch of articles for state journals. I've done a few smaller ones, but it's kind of self-promoting myself, and I've applied to present at a few state conferences, which outside of the New Hampshire State Conference, which is like, hey, I live here, you'll let me present. I've never done anything like that before, but it's like, if we want to really, I want to try to expand my guest conducting outside. I do guest conduct on the West Coast sometimes, and I still go to Utah, and I'm going to New Jersey to do a clinic in the near future. But primarily, most of my work is in the Northeast, but I kind of want to branch out more. And the only way to do that is by getting your name out there. And I think it's the same as for composers.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mark. So what's your favorite work for wind ensemble and why?
So when you sent me this question, this is one of two questions I think I tortured myself over. Outside of, the whole suites, and I could probably run down like 30 pieces that I consider quote unquote my favorite. But then I started thinking, what do I consider my favorite piece? And I have this good, bad thing that happens to me where my favorite piece is something that I hear and then I feel like I have to do. And until I do that piece, I can't like I'll hear it in my head. I can't rest. There's been a couple pieces throughout the years that have really kind of just attacked me that way. And, right now, I think if you were to ask me what my favorite piece is, I would have two of them. One of them is, and I just listened to this, and if you're looking for something weird to do, Introduction to the Moon by Libby Larsen. It's a rental, but it's got poetry that's read through a recording. This is one of the newer pieces that I just heard, and I have to do it. It's like I'm like a kid in a candy store. I see something, and I have to do it. And the other would be, there's a really, really cool, for those of us who, especially community band, who do America the Beautiful and the Carmen Dragon, which is a great arrangement of America the Beautiful. Philip Rothman, who's a New York City composer, just came out with within the last few years, a new arrangement of America the Beautiful, which I encourage everyone to go look up if you do a community band. It's got to have good brass. There's some really good brass fanfare stuff in there, but I think it's an incredible, I heard that one last year. Tony Maiello brought that piece to the New England Band Directors Institute, and he played it, and I thought, I have to do this. So now in my community band, they're the recipients of my obsession with doing different kinds of music. So to me, absolute favorite, I would probably have to say the Holst F Suite. Mm-hmm. Even though as a tuba player, for some reason, those first 5 notes, even though it's just an F major scale, I don't think I've ever played it right in my entire life. I could play an F major scale, but if you put it at the beginning of the Holst F Suite, but I would say that's probably my favorite piece. But if you were to ask me that same question tomorrow, I might have a very different answer.
Sure. I like the fact that it changes.
And not necessarily just classical music either. I listen to everything.
Okay, so what advice would you give to your younger self?
This was the other question that I kind of tortured myself over. I think my advice would be, again, 2 things. One, we talked about this earlier, but don't stop learning. Don't get so comfortable in yourself that you feel like you have nothing more to learn. I just did went back to Gettysburg College a few weeks ago to do a career services talk with a fraternity, a Sigma Nu fraternity that I'm a brother at. And, I was the old man there. It was me and a bunch of people who graduated in the 2000s, the late 2000s. So I got to give them some advice on what it's like to be out of college for a while. And I think the one thing I would say is 20-year-old me, probably if I told 20-year-old me what I do now, 20-year-old me would laugh at me and think that was totally not ever true. You never know what you're going to do and how your career will change or shift as you get older. And even if you find something you love to do, that may change over time. So I think that also goes with the don't stop learning is don't be afraid to try new things and don't get so comfortable with what you do. Because I think we all tend to do that from time to time.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Is there anything coming up that you would like to share or promote?
The 3 big things. We talked about the New England Band Directors Institute. I really encourage people. We do get people as far away from as Utah, Michigan, New Jersey, which really isn't that far, I guess. But it's a great opportunity to come. Again, some of these clinics and these sessions, even some of our guest clinicians come and they say, how are you able to do this for only $75? So you're not going to get that good a deal. So that's up in July. The Newport Music Festival coming up in July this year as well. If you want to hear incredible chamber music in beautiful mansions, I encourage you to come to Newport. That's a little pricier than the New England Band Directors Institute, but it's a great experience, especially if you're local. And then probably any of the Seacoast Wind Ensemble, if you're in the northern New England region, we perform beginning beginning Memorial Day. We perform throughout the summer in Maine and New Hampshire, but they're a great ensemble to hear. And we play outside in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, right in the middle of the street. We play right on the beach, Hampton Beach in New Hampshire. We do a great Memorial Day concert. We're working on that music right now up in Freiburg, Maine, and it's a great group to hear. So those would be the 3 big things that are coming up.
And how can people get in touch with you?
You can reach me at mark@stickneymusic.net is probably the easiest way. I'm one of those people who firmly believes in not having my work email synced up to my phone. So I do check my work email constantly when I'm at work, but my personal email is a little easier way. You can look at my blog. There's a way to contact me. It's Stickney Music is the name of the blog. I'm such a horrible self-promoter. I don't know the name of anything I do. I believe it's Stickney Music. It's a WordPress blog. There's a contact me section on that. I'm always wanting to talk to people. I'm having conversations with high school students about what it's like to be in college. Any festival I conduct, I always tell the students, please email me questions. And I'm not offended if you ask me what it's like to audition for another school. My school is not for everyone. No school is for everyone. I really want to reach out to people who want to do music as a career, but also music as just a side passion to help them kind of keep going with that.
Do you have any sort of YouTube?
I have a YouTube channel. It's got stuff from. I've arranged a few things throughout the years, but mostly it's clips of the Plymouth State University band, the Southern Utah University bands that I conducted, and some. I also was the jazz band director at Plymouth State my first few years, which is something I miss doing. But that one is. It's if you actually just YouTube search my name, I think it will come up near the top of the list.
Okay, Mark. Any last minute advice?
Explore. To any composers, conductors, students, anyone, explore more, take more chances with what you do, think more outside the box, and try things. To me, the blog was a really uncomfortable experience when I first started because some of what I say is not necessarily. I haven't gotten hate mail, but I've gotten some emails that have disagreed with what I say. But I think it's important to get your voice out there. And I think it's important to try new things.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.